Can some of the new film starter deck cards make King a more meta deck? Let's talk about it. What's up, captains? Welcome back to the other decks. My name's Casual Dobo, and today we're going to be making a King deck. Now, I know we've featured a King deck before. If you haven't seen that, that took second place in the Super Rookie Royale tournament. You can go check that on the channel. But one of the things I was sort of interested in as I was doing my last video, which was our optimized film starter deck video, was how some of those cards could play into a King deck. So typically King does like a lot of ramp and does want to be working in, the full range of its Dawn, right? Because if you don't know, King's ability says on your turn, if you have 10 Dawn cards on your field, give all of your opponent's characters minus 1000 power. So it's a universal debuff for your opponent. And then the thing that made me really think about it was Shiki from the starter deck, right? Because it says if you have 8 or more Dawn, it can't be KO'd in battle. And so in sort of like the most simplistic explanation of how this happened, I was like, does King plus Shiki equal awesome? And I think that's what we're here to find out. So this is my first initial build of it, and I would love to know your thoughts on it. Please let me know in the comments down below. And then if you're enjoying the video, liking what you're seeing, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Definitely going to be doing more One Piece and more Digimon videos, so if you're into both of those card games, this is the channel for you. But anyway, I think that's going to be enough of an intro for me. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the deck profile. Alright, and like we do with all of our One Piece deck profiles, we start off with the Dawn curve, and this one, honestly, it's a little funky. It's a little bit like a sort of lopsided bell curve with a sort of spike into 5s, and that's because this is definitely more of a mid but closer to a late game deck, so we'll see how it does in the sort of aggressive meta that we're in. So the bulk of our deck is in the 2s, 3s, 4s, and then the 5s coming in at a whopping 12 count, right? So it's pretty big, and we still do have a couple of things in our 6s and our 8s. So yeah, this is definitely one of those decks where we want to be utilizing the ramp and not so much the Dawn minus abilities that purple typically has. So now that we've seen the Dawn curve, let's go ahead and check out the individual cards that make up that curve. Alright, and here we are at the deck profile. So starting us off, we do have one copy, only one copy because it's our leader King. So like I said before, it is a typical monocolor purple, so 5000 power, 5 life, even though it's a little difficult to see with the alternate art card that I'm featuring. But the ability says your turn, if you have 10 Dawn cards on your field, give all your opponent's characters minus 1000 power. So if you think about it, it's pretty much the opposite of the Zoro deck, which I think is a pretty cool theme. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Black Maria. So this is our cheap blocker, 2 cost to play, 2000 power blocker. But unlike the film starter deck blocker, this does have counter potential, counter plus 1000. And as I mentioned in that video as well, we are in a pretty blocker heavy meta, so having full play cost of our blockers is important. Next up, we do have 3 copies of Ulti. So this is the set 1 Ulti, 2 cost to play, 3000 power on play, 1. So you do need to rest 1 Dawn to activate it, but you can add 1 card from your Dawn deck and rest it. So this is part of our ramp package that we include in the King deck, and allows us to get to 10 either faster or maintain ourselves at 10. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Sasaki, so 3 cost to play, 4000 power, but this is one of our counter plus 2000s, which I forgot to mention. I think we're running about 29 counters in here, which seems a little light, but 12 of those counters are plus 2000 counters. And that was mostly from just looking at some of the sort of winning decks that have been around, especially in the early parts of the game. They are running about 10 to 12 of these plus 2000 counters, or as the Eggman mentions, super counters. So I kind of went with that sort of framework for this deck. And so 4 copies of this, then Dawn times 1. So you need to attach 1 Dawn to it. When attacking, you can trash a card from your hand, then add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and rest it. So once again, another part of the ramp package. Next up, we do have page 1 from the set. So 4 cost to play, 5000 power, counter plus 1000, Then activate main once per turn, Dawn -1. This character can also attack your opponent's active characters during this turn. So I think this page 1 has great utility in that it can attack active characters. So if your opponent wants something, to not get KO'd, they might leave it up. This would allow you to swing into them. Other than that particular ability, is a pretty standard card, unless you pair it with 4 copies of Ulti, right? So this is from the starter deck, 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, counter plus 2,000, which is why it's super important to have in here. And then on play Dawn -1, you can play up to 1 page 1 character card with a cost of 4 or less from your hand without paying that cost. So obviously there's some very good synergy between those 2 page 1s, and I like the set 1 page 1. That's a lot of numbers. I like the page 1 from the first set, the booster box, a little bit more than the starter deck, just because of that ability, right? Yeah, the starter deck one is 6,000 power, it's a heavy hitter, but it is a vanilla other than that. Now I will say, if you don't want to utilize the ulti page 1 combo, you can reduce this down to probably 2 copies, and that way you're still playing with that sort of 10 counter plus 2,000 potential, and then include some other things that you find more valuable. And that's sort of the tricky thing about this first set, is that there's a lot of things that you can do in purple, right? I chose to go with the ulti combo, but I think there's a number of other ways that you can go that's equally as powerful. So if you don't go with the ulti combo, I'd love to hear what you think can be included in this package as well. Moving on, we do have 4 copies of X-Drake. This is another plus 2,000 counter, 5 cost to play, 5,000 power. I do like its ability though. On play, Dawn -1. Your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. And if you've played any amount of the One Piece card game thus far, you do know that having your opponent have less cards in hand means that, there's less potential counters, there's less events. It just kind of forces your opponent into a situation in which they were not expecting. So yeah, really like these abilities to interact with our opponent's hand. And I hope for more in the future, to be honest. And then yeah, not only does X-Drake have a fantastic on-play ability, but also a natural attacker at 5,000 power. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Kiyoshiro, so 5 cost to play, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000. So it does have the trifecta that we're looking for in a card. And then on play, if we have 8 or more Dawn cards on our field, draw 1. So yeah, with the ramp package that we have in here, these effects that require 8 or more Dawn cards definitely see a lot more play and are a lot more viable in this particular deck. And then yeah, the ability to be able to draw 1 without losing any of our other resources is actually pretty powerful. So that's why I keep it at 4 copies, and also 6k power just adds a lot of pressure onto the board. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Queen. So 5 cost to play, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000. So great stats. Also has blocker, which is really nice. And then on play, Dawn -1, draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. So for all my Digimon players, this is the Lady Devimon ability, and is really cool just because we get to cycle our hand and refresh it and keep the cards that we want to keep, discarding anything that might be deemed useless, while also netting 1 more card from it. And it's a 6k blocker, which is pretty nice. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Shiki, the main sort of idea behind the deck, right? So this is 6 to play, 7,000 power, counter plus 1,000. If you have 8 or more Dawn cards on your field, this character cannot be KO'd in battle. And I think it is incredibly important and adds a lot of pressure onto your opponent that there is essentially a relatively indestructible character card that has 7k power on your field. And as long as you don't activate any Dawn minus abilities, that should stay relatively there on your opponent's turn, right? Because right now there isn't a whole lot of things that can remove Dawn on your opponent's side. Sure, you can force them with some of the purple counters that are available, but that does require a little bit of thinking. So yeah, with the amount of ramp that's in this, particular deck, I think there's a good shot of this being pretty viable and pretty sustainable. Then next up, we do have 3 copies of Douglas Bullet. So 8 cost to play, 10,000 power, activate main once per turn, Dawn -4, rest up to 2 of your opponent's cost 6 or lower characters, then this character gains double attack during the turn. So this is a really great finisher, especially if your opponent has only 2 cards left. because 10,000 power is a huge number to try and overcome with, random events and characters or encounters. Also, this does have the natural strength to overcome one of the biggest problematic characters in set 1 of One Piece, which is the kid character card. And in my opinion, the most valuable aspect of this card is the flexibility. You can choose when to activate that ability. If you just want to swing 10k into a character, you don't need to activate it at all. It's not a one attacking, it's not an on play, so you can really choose when to utilize that Dawn -4. That said, Dawn -4 would obviously negate a lot of the things that is happening in here, so that flexibility became incredibly important for me when it came to its inclusion in the deck. And the reason I didn't use something like the board wipe Kaido or one of the other Kaido cards is that I think for what they do, they're much better in other purple decks, right? Not necessarily for a king deck. But the board wipe Kaido was something that I was trying to keep in mind for a while building this. But I think one of the benefits of this particular deck is going wide and building up that character board. And so to have Kaido just come in and destroy my own stuff as well as my opponent's stuff, I was thinking maybe the trade-off isn't quite as favorable as maybe some of the other decks that you can use board wipe Kaido. So that was my rationale to that. And then going into our events, we do have 4 copies of Blast Breath. So this is probably one of the best event counters in the game right now, at least for purple. So 1 cost to play, does require Dawn -1, but for this battle, your leader or one of your characters gets plus 4,000 power. So yeah, 1 cost to play, -1 Dawn for plus 4,000. Pretty good. Next up, we do have 3 copies of Thunder Bagua. So 2 costs to play, counter. Your leader or one of your characters gains plus 4,000 power during the turn. So very similar to Blast Breath. But if you have 2 or less life cards, add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and rest it. So once again, it does give us a little bit of ramp in the actual effect. And then its trigger ability is add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So pretty good trigger. Then rounding out our events, we do have 3 copies of Lion's Threat Imperial Earthbind. So this does come from the film starter deck. 3 costs to play. Main ability, Dawn -2, KO up to one of your opponent's 5 cost or lower characters. So obviously this is a sort of cheap removal card, event card for purple. The other one that I would compare it to is, Brachio Bomber, which is 6 costs to play, so pretty steep, but it does a couple of other things. I like the ability of having this 3 cost Dawn -2. I sort of like the flexibility that only paying 3 does, just because it can be a cheap way to get rid of some pretty problematic cards. The range of 5 cost or lower is actually pretty wide. Obviously not as wide as Brachio Bomber, but it still covers a pretty good chunk of things that can be problematic for this deck. And then last but not least, we do have 2 copies of Onigashima. So 3 costs to play, stage card, activate main, rest it if your leader has Animal Kingdom Pirates, which it does, and then add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck to the cost area, rested. So yeah, really this is sort of the key to our ramp package. This is the one that we would love to see as early as possible. Honestly, we might want a mulligan for it. But because of the nature of stage cards, they're very similar to Tamers and Digimon in the early game, where they were good, but they didn't quite provide enough value to have so many of them, at least not yet. And that's why I only keep 2 of them. But honestly, I'm not too worried about that, just because we do have a couple of different cards that can ramp in the meantime until we see our Onigashima, and we do have a little bit of draw power built into the deck in a couple of cards where we do have a good shot of seeing it during the game. But yeah, that is my my king deck with some film upgrades into it. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it. I definitely think it's an interesting concept. Is this the final iteration of it? Probably not. But as I go through playtesting and then kind of come up with a more final version, I'll be sure to let y'all know. So if you want to see that in hopefully the near future, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and that way you'll be notified when that comes out. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, just because that helps out a lot for not only, you know, the elusive algorithm, but also allows me to know what y'all are enjoying. But anyway, I think that'll do it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And captains, remember, build what you like, play what you love. And I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one.